The night I sold my future, nothing dramatic happened. No sirens. No shouting. No irreversible event that the world would ever notice. Just a quiet decision. And silence. People think life changes only when something big explodes. But sometimes, your life changes when you choose comfort over truth. I was exhausted. Not physically. Existentially. My days felt like copies of each other. Wake up. Work. Smile. Repeat. No purpose. No direction. No sense of becoming. I wasn't unhappy. I was empty. The kind of empty that doesn't hurt. It just erases. I told myself I was stable. Responsible. Doing fine. But fine is the most dangerous word. Because fine doesn't mean alive. One evening, I received a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Not a friend. Not family. A former colleague. He knew things about me. My financial struggles. My quiet frustrations. My lack of direction. He wrote, "I have an opportunity for you. No long-term commitment. Just one night. One night." That didn't sound like a future. It sounded like an escape. We met in a place that felt deliberately anonymous. No names. No history. Just two men sitting across from each other with something to gain. He didn't talk about dreams. He talked about solutions. Money. Silence. Discretion. You don't have to explain anything, he said. Just be there. Sign. Leave. I asked what it would cost me. He smiled. Nothing you'll notice immediately. That should have scared me. But fear feels distant when you're tired of your own life. I told myself it was temporary. Just one night. Just one choice. Just one quiet shortcut. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. Not because of the money. Because of what it represented. I didn't know the full story. I didn't want to. Wanting to know would have forced me to care. And caring requires courage. So I didn't ask. That night, I stood in front of a mirror, staring at myself like I was someone else. The man looking back at me didn't look guilty. He looked relieved. Relief is dangerous. Because it makes you believe the cost was worth it. I signed the paper. Not with excitement. With exhaustion. When it was over, nothing changed immediately. The world didn't react. No consequences arrived. No dramatic shift occurred. Life continued. And that's what made it terrifying. Because when nothing breaks, you assume nothing was broken. But something had. Inside. Slowly. Quietly. I started noticing small changes. Not outside. Inside. I avoided certain thoughts. Certain questions. Certain mirrors. Because mirrors don't reflect your face. They reflect your choices. The money solved my immediate problems. Rent. Bills. Silence. But it didn't solve my direction. It replaced it. I told myself I had taken control. But control felt more like numbness. I wasn't moving forward. I was standing still in a different place. The hardest part wasn't the secret. It was the realization that I didn't feel proud or ashamed. I felt neutral, and neutrality is where your identity starts to disappear. I stopped thinking about the future. Not because I was satisfied. Because I was disconnected. The choice I had made didn't feel evil. It felt practical. And practical decisions often feel safe. Until you realize what they cost you. Weeks passed. Then months. The memory of that night faded into something abstract. Like a dream you can't fully remember. But its effects stayed. I became quieter. More distant. Less curious. The part of me that used to question things stopped speaking. Not because it agreed. Because it had been silenced. One evening, while walking home, I passed a group of young people laughing loudly about plans they were excited to chase. Not safe plans. Alive plans. Something twisted in my chest. Not envy. Recognition. I used to sound like that. Now I sounded like someone who had chosen comfort over becoming. I didn't ruin my life. I just paused it. Indefinitely. The worst part wasn't that I sold my future. It was that I didn't even ask what it was worth. I thought the price would be loud. I thought consequences would arrive like a storm, sudden, obvious, undeniable. But my consequences arrived like dust. Quietly. They settled on everything I touched until I couldn't tell what was clean anymore. At first, the money felt like proof that I had finally fixed something. I paid off the debts that had been squeezing my chest for years. I replaced the broken phone. I bought groceries without counting coins in my head. I even slept better for a while, the way you sleep when your body thinks danger has passed. But the danger wasn't outside. It was inside the decision I had made. Because I had sold something I couldn't replace, and I didn't even know what it was yet. One afternoon, I got another message from the same man. "Everything's fine," he wrote. "Just keep quiet." I stared at the screen, feeling a cold wave climb up my spine. Keep quiet? As if silence was a job. As if my own mouth belonged to someone else now. That was the first moment I realized I hadn't just accepted money. I had accepted ownership. Not ownership of something physical. Ownership of my fear. For weeks after that, my life looked normal, but my mind stopped being a safe place. When I stood in line at a cafe, I wondered who was watching. When a stranger held my gaze too long, I felt exposed. When my phone rang from an unknown number, my heart slammed against my ribs like it was trying to escape me. I started replaying the night again, trying to remember details I had ignored. The paper I signed. The wording. The pause in his voice when I asked what it would cost. Nothing you'll notice immediately. I noticed it now. I noticed it in how I avoided thinking about the future. I had always believed my future was something I could shape if I ever found the energy. Now, my future felt like something I was borrowing. Like a room I wasn't allowed to decorate. The first real crack came in a place I didn't expect, a hospital. It wasn't me. I didn't get sick. I didn't get hurt. A woman I worked with, quiet, kind, always tired in that gentle way, lost her brother in a sudden incident. That's what people called it. An incident. A word that makes tragedy sound manageable. She came back to work pale, holding herself together like a fragile object. People offered condolences, then returned to their screens. And I stood there, listening to half-whispered details. A signature. A contract. A legal handoff. A decision made quickly. My stomach tightened. My mind did something cruel, it connected threads. I told myself it was coincidence. But guilt doesn't care about coincidence. It cares about possibility. That night, I couldn't eat. I couldn't breathe properly. I sat on the edge of my bed and tried to convince myself I wasn't responsible. I hadn't caused an accident. I hadn't held a weapon. I hadn't hurt anyone with my hands. But responsibility isn't always physical. Sometimes it's administrative. Sometimes it's financial. Sometimes it's one quiet signature that makes something possible. I realized the moral dilemma I had avoided was finally standing in front of me, unblinking. If I told the truth, I could destroy people. Not only him, the man who paid me. I could destroy myself. I could lose my job, my reputation, my fragile stability. But if I stayed silent, I would keep living on money that might be stained with consequences I couldn't see. And the worst part, I would be choosing it again, every day. Not with a signature. With silence. I started drinking more at night. Not because I wanted to forget. Because I wanted to feel numb. When you're numb, you don't have to decide. Numbness is a temporary shelter. But it collapses. It always collapses. One morning, I woke up with my phone in my hand and a half-written message in the Notes app. It was addressed to no one. Just a confession. I did something I can't explain. I took money. I signed. I didn't ask questions. I deleted it immediately. My hands were shaking. Not because I was afraid of consequences. Because I had almost admitted to myself that I was ashamed. Shame isn't about what you did. It's about who you became when you did it. I became someone who accepted comfort over truth. Someone who allowed ambiguity to replace morality. Someone who let exhaustion speak louder than conscience. The man texted again a week later. Short. Simple. We need you again. I stared at the words until my eyes burned. Again there was, and again the first time had been framed as a one-night thing. A quick fix. A temporary escape. But escape is never temporary when someone else benefits from your silence. I didn't reply. Hours passed. Then another message. If you don't respond, things get complicated. That phrase, things get complicated, felt like a soft threat. Not violent. Administrative. The kind of threat that doesn't leave bruises. It leaves fear. My mind started racing through worst-case scenarios. What if he exposed me? What if he blamed me? What if the signature I gave could be used as proof? What if I was already trapped and just hadn't admitted it? I walked through my apartment, touching objects like they belonged to someone else. My life had been unstable before. Now it felt unstable in a different way. Not because of bills. Because of secrets. Secrets don't only hide the truth from others. They reshape you from the inside. I found myself snapping at people for no reason. Avoiding friends. Avoiding invitations. Avoiding eye contact with my own reflection. Then the panic attack happened. It was ordinary, almost embarrassing. A normal day. A normal commute. I was standing on a train platform when I felt my chest tighten, my vision narrow, my breath turn thin and sharp. The crowd around me blurred. I remember thinking, very clearly, this is what it feels like to be trapped in your own decision. I walked away from the platform, shaking, pretending I was just late for something. But I wasn't late. I was breaking. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my mother. I didn't tell her the truth. I didn't confess. I just listened to her voice and realized I had been living like a man with no roots. A man who had chosen a shortcut so steep it turned into a cliff. She asked, "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm just tired." The same lie I had been telling myself. After we hung up, I sat in the dark and finally let the truth land. I didn't sell my future for one quiet night. I sold my ability to live without fear. Because fear was now part of the deal. And deals like that don't end on their own. I needed to choose. Not between good and bad. Between two kinds of damage. Damage to my life if I spoke. Damage to my soul if I didn't. I stared at my phone for a long time, thumb hovering over the screen. The man's last message was still there, "We need you again." And I understood the most terrifying part. The first signature wasn't the moment I sold my future. The first signature was the moment I agreed to be asked again. Silence is how consent becomes habit. And habit becomes identity. I didn't know yet what I would do. But I knew I couldn't keep living like this. Because a life built on quiet compromises doesn't collapse in public. It collapses inside you. And my collapse had already begun. The message stayed on my phone for 3 days. We need you again. No explanation. No details. Just a reminder that silence had turned into obligation. I didn't answer. Not because I was brave. Because I was exhausted. Exhausted from pretending that fear was normal. Exhausted from waking up with my chest already tight. Exhausted from carrying a secret that had started to feel heavier than any debt I ever had. On the fourth night, I sat alone in my apartment with the lights off. The city outside was loud, alive, moving forward. Inside, I felt frozen in the moment I had signed my name. I realized something simple and terrifying: every day I stayed silent, I was signing again. Not with a pen. With my existence. I had told myself I only sold my future for one quiet night. But I had actually sold my sense of direction. My sense of safety. My ability to live without looking over my shoulder. The money was long gone. The consequences were not. My phone buzzed again. A new message. Last chance to respond. No threat. No anger. Just pressure. The kind of pressure that doesn't scream. It waits. And waiting is what makes fear grow. I stood in front of the mirror and looked at myself properly for the first time in weeks. Not at my face. At my eyes. They looked tired. Not from work. From hiding. From knowing something was wrong and choosing not to act. I whispered to the reflection, "Who are you protecting?" The answer hurt. Not my family. Not innocent people. Not even myself. I was protecting my comfort. The comfort of not dealing with consequences. The comfort of staying invisible. And comfort, I finally understood, can be more destructive than chaos. I didn't want to live like this anymore. Not as a shadow. Not as a silent participant in something I didn't believe in. So I made the decision I had avoided since the beginning. Not to fight. Not to expose. To leave. Not a dramatic escape. A quiet, honest disappearance. I contacted a lawyer the next morning. Not to accuse anyone. To understand my position. To understand the paper I had signed. To understand how trapped I actually was. The truth was painful but simple: I wasn't legally owned. But I was psychologically controlled. Fear had done the work for them. And fear only loses power when you look at it directly. I didn't go to the police. Not because I didn't care. Because I wasn't ready to destroy everything in one explosion. Some truths need space to be processed. But I did one thing that changed everything. I stopped responding. No messages. No explanations. No silence disguised as cooperation. Just absence. At first, nothing happened. Then the messages became sharper. Then they stopped. And in that silence, I felt something unfamiliar: relief. Not safety. Relief. The kind that comes when you finally stop pretending. My life didn't become easier overnight. The fear didn't vanish. The guilt didn't dissolve. But something shifted. I wasn't trapped in the same loop anymore. I wasn't waiting for instructions. I was choosing. And choosing, even imperfectly, felt more honest than obeying quietly. Weeks passed. Nothing dramatic happened. No revenge. No consequences. Just the slow return of my own thoughts. My own voice. My own direction. I started noticing small changes. I slept better. Not deeper. Calmer. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes. I stopped imagining worst-case scenarios. I started thinking about my future again. Not ambitious. Not grand. Just real. The strange thing about fear is that it convinces you something terrible will happen if you stop complying, but most of the time, what actually happens is this: you start breathing again. I didn't become a hero. I didn't fix the system. I didn't expose a dark network. I simply refused to keep selling myself quietly. And that was enough. One evening, months later, I walked past a group of young people talking about their plans. Not safe plans. Alive plans. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel that sharp twist in my chest. I felt something softer. Acceptance. Not of my past. Of my present. I had made a terrible choice once. Out of exhaustion. Out of fear. Out of the need for silence. But I didn't let that choice define the rest of my life. Because mistakes don't shape your identity. What you do after them does. I didn't sell my future for one quiet night. I almost sold my conscience. But I took it back. Not loudly. Not publicly. Just honestly. And honesty, even when it comes late, is still a form of freedom. Now, when I look in the mirror, I don't see a hero. I see a man who learned something the hard way: your future isn't taken from you. You give it away. And if you can give it away, you can also take it back. One quiet choice at a time.